All right. Welcome back to Cbus Mob. I am here with Bryson Tarbet, the owner of That Music Teacher. Bryson, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm so excited to see what we can get into today. Long story short, I am an elementary music specialist and instructional coach who jumped ship from teaching in a public school to running a professional development company online to help support other music teachers that are in the trenches get professional development that helps them up level their teaching. And I absolutely love it. And I love getting to see all the different challenges of being a business owner and working in this field. And I'm really excited to see where our conversation goes today.
Yeah. First of all, does your t-shirt say be kind on it? I can
It
see like the
does.
top
It
level.
says be kind, just as a reminder to everybody out there.
I love it because we need reminding. Just life happens and sometimes we're not so kind. So I love your shirt. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Well, you and I first met because your business is certified. And so we met through getting That Music Teacher certified. So talk to me like, why did you do that? Why was it important? Kind of all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'll be honest. For me, it was really about planting a flag in the ground about what my company believes in. Coming in the field of education and having such a wide audience of people, uh, there has been some times in the course of my business where people got surprised that I was talking about certain things, and I didn't really want it to be a surprise anymore. I wanted them to be like, "Yep, this sounds right. This is," and like, not necessarily saying I don't want you in my world, but like, this is my company. This is my the views and the views that I think are really important in education, whether or not you agree with me, I'm allowed to have those. So for me, one of those was just really about creating inclusive classrooms across the board. I've
Mm.
got into, I have to say, I left teaching about a year and a half ago, and not being a public servant, especially as a gay man, has been my favorite part. Being able to be a little bit more vocal about certain things without feeling I have, people watching over my shoulder, or people going to go to the state board and come for my license. So for me, that certification was really saying that music teacher believes in this, in the fact that, LGBT plus people first exist, they
Yes.
deserve to be supported, and they're doing really cool things. And that was really important for me to say, this is the line in the sand. And if you're not on board, then get off. And I think that's kind of the important thing for me.
No, I love it. I think it's amazingly important. And I see as we continue as a country, more and more people getting the certification for a similar reason. Not necessarily because they're looking for government or, well, not government, but
Exactly.
state contracts, but to just be a signal. So that's amazing. Okay. So you have been helping music teachers for the last year and a half in private business. What an interesting time to start consulting with schools, essentially. So, however you're finding that and navigating it, especially in Ohio, where we just keep regulating the heck out of
Yeah.
the trans
Everything.
community. Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
But
I think, for me, I actually started what became my company before I even started teaching. It all started with an Instagram account. And then, I actually did this full time, while I was teaching full time for many years. But you bring up a really good point, which is, part of the reason that I left teaching, as much as I love teaching, was that post COVID school board craziness, to put it very nicely. It just wasn't something that I could be a part of anymore. And especially teaching out in a very rural conservative school district, there were some amazing people out there. There were some amazing students out there, but the writing was on the wall for people like me. Unfortunately, I needed to make a new shift. Now, bringing it back to your question, it's been an interesting time. My first year out of teaching, because I had the availability, because I wasn't tied to a school calendar, I did a lot of in-person professional developments for school districts all over the country. And then this past school year, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but all of the title funding was happening, wasn't happening, was kind of
huh?
happening. And
Yeah.
traditionally, that's where a lot of my funding came from, through Title 4A funding. So it was wild. Like, this summer, nobody would answer the phone. Nobody would talk to me, because nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew what funds they were or weren't not going to have. And kind of bringing it back to, the other part of your question, one thing that I love about being my own boss now and not having to worry about taking off some person that'll go to a school board. I actually went viral for a wrong reason a couple of times within my school district in those wonderful Moms in the Know Facebook groups. And that was those are very eye-opening points for me. There was one TikTok that I made many, many years ago all about just how to be LGBT inclusive without really saying anything. And oh, buddy, did that become a whole thing about, you have rainbows all over your room. I'm like, one, I don't. And two, I teach kindergartners. So yeah,
Yeah.
like, and it really that was the first moment where I realized this is a deeper issue than just people that have really strong opinions. Because while the vast majority of the people that I worked with were very supportive, there were so many people, administrators, I had some administrators who did not support me at all. And I had some that were absolutely amazing. But even those that were really wanted to be on my side, they kind of had their hands tied a little bit because of the rest of the world. Let's be honest, the reality of local control sometimes swings the opposite direction and creates environments where the loud, squeaky wheel gets what they want. And whether or not that's good for students, whether that's not good for morale of your staff or anything, it doesn't really matter. So what I love about doing my own work is I get to say what I want to say, make the content that I want to make without worrying about retribution, other than maybe some sales will go down. And I also am kind of one of the subscribers to, there are people like me and that believe in what I believe in all over the world.
And they'll find you.
I don't need to attract everyone. I need to attract the people that I'm going to be able to help and going to be able to empower to make the shift in education that I wasn't able to do boots on the ground, but I can be a part of in this capacity.
Oh, I have so many questions to come out of that. So, I mean, let's start with one top of mind, which is, do you feel empowered because before you were one person trying to do this and now you can influence many to effectuate change? Does that like weigh into what your decision to do this?
To a certain degree, but it was also to the point where, by the time I had the decision to leave teaching, things were big. There was a lot going on. We're having events with 5, 6, 7,000 people joining us. And it was kind of there are people like this. There's something here. This isn't this niche thing that's going to blow out or fizzle out in a year or two. This is kind of the start of a bigger movement. And I think that really made me realize I love what I get to do in the classroom. I hate all the other administrative stuff we have to do on top of that and the hoops we have to jump through and, feeling like we're always being watched. But I was really drawn towards this work because I get to connect people that feel like they're alone. We lovingly refer to it as Music Teacher Island because we're often so isolated within our fields. But then, when we're coming about certain themes, there are even pockets that are even more isolated. There are so many conversations happening in the elementary music landscape that are so important. And it's really blatantly, glaringly obvious that there are some people that have their heels dug in so deep that nothing's going to change them until they retire and we get some new blood in. And I hate saying that because there's also people that have been doing this for years that have so much to share and it gives them a bad rap. But the reality is education is such a system and it's hard to change a system and it's hard to change minds. So I'm glad that I get to be a part of a shift in that system. At least that's the goal.
Yeah, no, I love it. Do you think just with age and experience, you were able to get to that comfort level to say, yeah, this isn't for everyone, and I'm okay with that? Because I have to think about that like when you're 20 and you're just like, oh, please, someone hire me. And I don't know how old you are, but I know you're not 20. Oh,
Yeah, so it really came down to figuring out what I really cared about. When I started seeing the writing on the wall, not necessarily just in education in general, but like that it wasn't really what I wanted to do full time. I worked with my therapist and he was like, well, what are your values? Because it feels like something's off here. And it was fantastic. It was the biggest thing. And I brought that into my company, into my personal life. And it's like huge catalyst of change because it made me realize I do have these big values. One of the huge ones for me was authenticity. And I wasn't able to do that in the role that I was in. And because I was teaching, I wasn't able to be authentic in my company 100% because I always had to, I had to run every social media post through the lens of, well, what if a parent saw this? Or what if this wasn't read at the school board? So I was kind of stuck in this limbo where I couldn't go one or the other way, which led me to jump ship and to do this full time. Um, and it's really been special. One of the things, I at one point wasn't writing my social media posts, but I took it over like right when I left teaching, and it was like the first time that I was able to like really say what I wanted to say, even when I wasn't being like super snarky or controversial. It was nice to know I'm the only one I have to answer to for this one,
Yeah.
and that's been great.
Okay, I want to talk about your core values because I love core values. I think they tell you a lot about the person and the company, but I also know business owners can sometimes skip them because they're like, ah, yeah, yeah, like I'll get to those, but like let me get money in the door. When you were thinking about your core values, did you think about them? I don't want to say first because I think you were making that decision, but when you decided to go full time into this business, was that forefront of I need to have core values and that has to drive what I do? Or
Yeah. So like once I kind of had that realization of my own personal value, I realized once I figured that out, decisions just started falling into place because it was like I had a North Star to point to. It was like I had a is this yes or no, and it made it really simple. So I worked with my chief operating officer who has been with me in some shape or another since 2020. So she's very into the business. She understands the purpose, and honestly, she understands me very well, which is great. And we worked together and we created three values: inclusivity matters, community empowerment matters, and advocacy matters. And what's been great about that is we've been faced with decisions, both big and small, that we're able to go, is that pointing to this or is it pointing away? And it really makes them easier.
mm,
And there are certain times where I'm not saying I've done it perfectly. There's definitely been missteps I've had, and times where I've been respectfully called out for good reason. And when I go back to those values, I realize this was a misstep. I
mm,
wasn't doing this. And it's been really nice to be able to use those as those catalysts for change and moving into what I want my company to be in. But also because it's such a small team and because, this is something I created from an Instagram account, it's very personal to me. And these values are very personal to me as well.
yeah, I love it. I get the chills. I love a value driven company. Okay. So you went from part time to full time. What was like the biggest aha to you outside of the freedom to say what you want to say from being like, oh, I have this steady paycheck to shit, I have to pay myself?
Yeah. So that big thing is it wasn't play money anymore. I didn't have a salary to pay my bills if an event didn't go well, or if, at the time we were very big into, we have, 2 to 3 launches a year, and then we just kind of eat on that the rest of the year. So for me, it was like, whoa, we have to get some recurring revenue in here. We have to do some bigger things here, maybe get some consulting gigs to kind of help cover us in those months where we're working towards a big summit, but we don't have any income coming in from it yet. And that's been a huge kind of perspective change for me, and figuring out also where the slow seasons are. You'd think as someone who spent his career up until that point in education, I'd understand where teachers did not want things, but we've been kind of figuring it out as we go. And sometimes we'll make a decision and we go, oh, well, that didn't work. Well, yeah, it's October. Teachers aren't going to want to go to this. And kind of just really understanding it has a little bit more heaviness to it, every decision, because I have my bills to pay, my team has their bills to pay, and it kind of having that pressure has been an interesting perspective, because it always used to be, well, if this doesn't work well, all I really have to pay is my team salaries, because I'll be good. I'll be
Yeah.
fine. I'll survive. So that's kind of been kind of the biggest shift going full time and 100% in this realm.
You said you have a team. How big is your team?
So I have a full-time chief operative officer, and then I have a part-time executive assistant who also handles our support.
Okay. All right. And are they remote? Or are they in the
They're
same
remote.
office as you? Yeah.
Yeah.
How, this is a question I love is like, how do you handle a remote team as like a company of one, right? Like as you're the owner and you have to manage people that you can't see.
Yeah, I think this is one of my ADHD superpowers. I love systems. I was using task management, Asana and SOPs when it was literally just me, just because I thought it was cool. So when we were able to, bring team members in, it was really simple, because hey, this says it was going to need to be done. It's been assigned to you. Is it done? Cool. Check. And I also think building that culture of relationship, even within a remote team, is something I think we do really well. Starting after our first big summit, so about 2022, I literally just texted my COO and I'm like, hey, she's multiple states over. I said, if I come to your town next week, can we like have a meeting for a day? And that turned into every year we do a leadership retreat in person. And I think we kind of basically plan out the whole rest of the year. We get to know each other. Like we just came back. Uh, my fiance and I were on this trip to the East Coast, and we visited her and her new baby on the way home. And
Huh,
it was just great
nice.
to be able to connect in that way and to build in opportunities. Like maybe we're playing a Jackbox game one night and we just kind of have a fun time, even though we're remote, doing something where we can not just work together has been really helpful in building those relationships and trust.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes sense. I talk to so many people who are like, but how? You know, and I always think it's really not that difficult considering most of what we work on is cloud-based and internet-based. They can be anywhere. So you talk about doing these events and such as your revenue, but what have you figured out is like the recurring revenue? Because I think sometimes that's harder than like marquee events because they're easier to like check, check, check. But coming up with a recurring revenue can sometimes be a challenge to think of what do people need 20.
Yeah, so we've kind of gone through a few different iterations of ideas of just how do we get revenue coming in, and what we landed on, and we're still figuring it out, but we're getting closer. I can feel it. We have an ongoing membership. It's called Elementary Music Edge. And essentially, it's building off of the fact of teachers are required to go to PD throughout the school year, and most school districts aren't giving them anything that's relative. So for me, I actually would use videos from summits that I wasn't able to actually watch because I was too busy in the weeds running the thing. If I had a PD day and nothing was scheduled for the music department, I'd go to my principal and say, hey, can I watch this video? It's an hour. It's led by this person. It's on this. And she'd be like, yeah. So that's what we developed Elementary Music Edge to
Very
be,
cool.
this kind of like on-demand professional development to support teachers throughout the year rather than only during those conferences, those virtual summits.
And did that take a lot of work to figure out like the back end tech piece? Because that sometimes can be intimidating. It's like, I have this idea, but like I logistically don't know how to accomplish it.
Yeah, so honestly, we just kind of jumped in and we started really scrappy and whatever we can do to make it better along the way. That's the biggest lesson I've ever learned in business is just try something. You will learn based on what happens on what to do next. So we started everything really, at the time everything was in Kajabi and we just threw it in there and see what happened. It might break, it might not, but it was fine. We've moved it over to a new software and we absolutely love it. It's a lot more control for us. But really it was just like, let's just get it out there, see what people have to say and iterate along the way to help us really meet those goals.
Yeah, that makes it. I think the biggest thing I've ever heard is like done is better than perfect. And so it
Yes.
sounds like you're like, let's get it done and then we'll improve. But if we don't have it done and out there, we don't know how to improve. Yeah, yeah, very cool. What is something that you wish you would have known before you went into this adventure of entrepreneurship that you didn't?
Goodness. That's one of those things where I feel like I did get right. I was just a sponge. And from basically the moment I graduated in undergrad to even to today, if I'm driving, there's a business podcast playing along, something about
Oh, okay.
marketing, something about operations. So that's one thing I feel like I really did get right is just take in all the information.
So you were destined to
You
run your
know,
own business then.
even if I didn't know it, it might have been. But I think really coming down to, what I wish I would have known is things change really quickly in the market and you need to be ready for that. Like so many business owners, I'm sure right now, the market is a very different world than we were in a year ago. And trying to see how do we still stay relevant, stay, attached to those values and serve our audience while also balancing the fact of, hey, we have bills to pay too. How do we kind of find that balance? So that's kind of something, just be ready. But be careful when you're making big waves because you never know when other shoe's going to drop and you might need to shift course very quickly.
Yeah, so I'm going to circle back to something you said earlier, which was the summer when no one knew what funding was happening, so you didn't get any calls. What did you do to like keep saying? Because I got to imagine you're just like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, because that's where I would be. So
Well, thankfully, as much as I am well, let's just make it happen and see what happens. I never actually budget revenue for my speaking until it's signed. Because for me, I just don't want the pressure of needing to make sales in order to meet my revenue guidelines. I'd rather that all be just little extra surprises along the way. So, what can I do to using the revenue from our summits and from our membership? What can I use? Is that going to be enough? And if not, all right, now what are we going to have to figure out? And then again, those professional development things, because they are so sporadic and they're so targeted. The beginning of the school year, August is always, well, not this August, but most of the time, August is like wild in with 2 weeks. And the same thing with the conference season. It's like boom, boom, boom. So I'd rather plan to not have them and be a little bit more conservative in that realm rather than, well, I'm $10,000 short in revenue this month. What am I going to do? So that's kind of been a big thing where I didn't spiral too much because I knew that,
You
I
had
had the
planned.
projections, I had the team that, being able to work with my accountant to like, we're going to be good. But at the same time, we were also seeing a lot of cancellations in our membership. And that part was really scary, seeing that on top of the other thing, because we did budget for that. And that's where, coming back to my last answer of how can we course correct very quickly. And that's one thing I love about my team and being so small is we can shift really quickly when we need to. I think sometimes a company can get really big and bloated that any change you need to make, there's just so many moving pieces that you're a month behind before you can get the change.
Yeah, my coaching group, we call the big firms barges and the small law firms speedboats, because you can make a much easier shift when you stay small. So that makes sense. All right. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation. I have two more questions for you. Lawyers' famous last words. Question one is, what is the best resource for anyone thinking about starting a business? And what is the best piece of advice you have for someone who's thinking about starting a business?
Best resource. Ooh, that's a really tricky one. A very early mentor in podcast land through her courses, through her membership, for me has always been Amy Porterfield. I just love what she does in the online space and the way she does it from her values. She's been a big mentor for me. So her podcast is wonderful, and she has so many resources out there that have led me to where I am now. So highly recommend anything Amy Porterfield and in her circle. And thinking about the biggest piece of advice, really for me, it's just do it. Don't let the fear of it blowing up in your face stop you from doing it, because I started my first thing I ever sold was a digital course that I launched in the middle of COVID about how to teach during, basically, what do we teach? I had never taught during COVID. I was only in my second year of teaching at the time. Like I had certain things that I did feel really confident about and I was really good at. I didn't have all the answers, but people still paid me and be part of this. And that the action that I took propelled me into being where I am today, because I wasn't afraid of not having all the answers to share the answers that I do have.
I love that. I love it. Because I don't think any business owner has all the answers.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're waiting until you have all the answers, you waited too long.
Yeah, correct. Well, thank you, Bryson. I really enjoyed this. We have links to your social handles and your website in the show notes. So if anyone has questions, wants to reach out to Bryson, you can find it in the show notes. Thank you.